Alright, this is it. This is the colorless slash land section of the Phyrexia All Will Be One set review, preview, card rating, the time when you rate the cards. Well, how do I rate the cards? Well, you rate them by this tier system, this lovely tier system here. Lovely. Oh, you want to know what the words in the top left say? Not possible. That would be rude. It would be rude of me for me to reveal those words. They're expertly hidden behind my webcam, so you can't see them. But the rest of the relevant words on this screen are the words that tell you about the tier rankings, that tell you how I rank the cards into 4 different tiers. Tier 1 is the best tier, Tier 4 is the worst tier. You can read more about the tiers. They're on this nice little page here, so if you want to take a look, I assume there's probably a typo somewhere on this page. I don't know. I haven't read it enough to know whether or not there's a typo on this page. I thought I looked at it, but it's one of those things where you look at it and you're like, maybe one of those like hidden typos where you don't see it until like the 8th time you read it. So it's kind of, you never know. So that's what's going on here. Feel free to take a look at this, but if you know what this is, we're just gonna get right into it with Argentium Masticore. It's 5 colorless mana for a 5/5 first strike protection for multicolored. At the beginning of your upkeep, you sacrifice it unless you discard a card. When you discard a card this way, you destroy target non-land permanent an opponent controls with mana value less than or equal to the mana value of the discarded card. So it sort of prices you into doing this thing to keep it alive. The thing itself is very strong, and it becomes problematic very quickly. I honestly, like, this thing could end up anywhere on the spectrum of really, really good to really, really bad. I put it in Tier 2 build around, which basically means that I have no idea what the hell is going on with this thing. Like, I just have no idea. Just no idea. It's like, it could be insane and it could be terrible. It's like, once you play with it, you will know whether or not it's insane or terrible. You will know very quickly whether or not it is one of those two things. It seems doable, like the thing that it asks you to do seems like a thing that is doable, and it is giving you something, like you are getting to 1-for-1 with your opponent's creature. Now, you're probably paying a little extra mana to do it, but you're doing it for free. Like, you're losing out on the card, but you're getting a free thing. So, I think this is fine. I think it's good. It's very weird, but I think its strength makes up for its weirdness in this case. Next. Atraxa's Skitterfang. 3 colorless mana for 2/2, and it enters the battlefield with 3 oil counters on it. At the beginning of combat or turn, you may remove an oil counter from this. When you do, target creature you control gets your choice of Flying, Vigilance, Death Touch, or Lifelink until end of turn. It's like a mini little Steel Seraph. And you'll know the things you'll know about Steel Seraph. Steel Seraph is very good, so this should probably be put into Tier 2, because like the oil counters, like, those are, you know, those are kind of, like, you get a bunch of those, and you can do this thing over and over again. Yeah, this is actually going to be pretty good. Now, the fact that it's a 3-mana 3/3 itself, or 3-mana 2/2, it's not, like, great. Like, the rate is pretty bad, but it does enable a bunch of stuff, and it is pretty annoying. So, like, I think this is going to be decent. This is going to be a decent card. Next, the first of the many skull bombs, the Basilica Spell Bomb is a 1 colorless mana. You can pay 1 to sacrifice it and draw a card, just like any of the Skull Bombs. And this one is 2 and a white to sacrifice it. Target creature you control gets +2/+2 and gains flying until end of turn, and you draw a card. And you can only activate this as a sorcery. All of the Skull Bombs are very good, because they enable you to do a thing, and they are a sacrifice outlet, and you can just, there's always a buyout of just sacrifice them to draw a card if the thing that you want to do with them doesn't apply to the board state. All of these are very good. This one is, I think, one of the top half ones. I think this is one of the better ones because it does give flying, and this is a very real buff. But yeah, drawing a card is very nice, and like this, even though it's slow, there's so much synergy with these that you are pretty much always going to be happy with it doing its thing. It comes out into play, does its thing, and you're going to be happy about the fact that it does its thing, and all of these are similar. So like the next one here, which is Duros Skull Bomb, which is it is exactly the same in every way, except that it is 2 and a black to sacrifice it. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and you also draw cards. You're basically drawing 2 with this thing. Yeah, it's good. It's really good. It's a lot slower than the white one, and I think that means it's a little bit worse. I put all of them in tier 2 because I think they're all sort of interchangeably good. They are not all the same. Some of them are worse than other ones, but this is a very good one. Just it's slow, but like you can always just buy out. You can always say, you know what, I don't want to do this thing anymore. I'm going to just pay 1 and draw a card, and that's fine. It's basically cycles for 2, so that's nice. And you can choose, like you can play it early and be like, do I want to cycle this? Like if the game plays out in such a way that you need to cycle it, you can cycle it. So I think these are just really solid. Next, Dune Mover. 2 colorless mana for 2/1 with Toxic 1. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your card library for a base land card, reveal it, and you shuffle it and put that card on top. So it does fix your mana. It does not give you card advantage while fixing your mana, but it does fix your mana. It would be too good if it gave you card advantage, obviously. It would be really, really insane. But it's still good. It's still good nonetheless. It still is fixing if you need to play fixing, and it does have Toxic 1, which is very relevant to pretty much every color except red, I think. Like, red is the only color that really doesn't care about this at all. But red doesn't really want this type of card anyway, so sort of all works out here. But the rate is still pretty bad. Like, it is, like, again, the tier 3 like reflects that. The card is bad, and you would prefer not to play it, but it is still fine. Next, Filigree Silex. 2 colorless mana for an artifact. You can tap to put an oil counter on it. You can also tap to sacrifice it and destroy each stun permanent with mana value equal to the number of oil counters on it, so it's sort of like a blast zone. And you can also tap and remove 10 oil counters from among permanents you control and sacrifice this, and it deals 10 damage to any target. So this is probably going to kill your opponent when you get to do that thing. And you can do that probably pretty early, depending on which colors you're in. But yeah, you'll be able to do that pretty early. I would believe. And so I think this just does enough. I think this does enough. Like, I think that the threat of it dealing 10 damage to your opponent and like having synergies with your other oil counter things, where you can like use this thing's oil counters to do other stuff, is cool. Is it good? I don't know. Like, it's interesting. Maybe I'm putting this a little too highly just because like again, it does sort of like they'll not kill your opponent every time, but it does still 10's a lot of damage, and like it can actually like remove something. Like if it doesn't kill your opponent, you can use it to remove one of their things, which is also good. So I don't know. I think it's solid. Next, Furnace Skull Bomb. 1. So this is just like the other Skull Bombs, except it has 1 and a red. And you can put 2 oil counters on target artifact or creature you control and draw a card instead of something else. So this one is pretty low impact, but the draw card text I think is solid. I think this is still good. I think this is still a thing that you want to do. I do think this is the lowest impact of the Skull Bombs, and that's why its cost is the lowest to do the thing that it asks you to do. But yeah, I think it's solid. Next, Graz Unstoppable Juggernaut. 8 mana for a 7/5. Juggernauts you control attack each combat if able. Juggernauts you control can't be blocked by walls. And of course, other creatures you control have base power and toughness 5/3 and are Juggernauts in addition to their other types. So this receives the very rare grade of meme. This is a meme, but it is also decent. Like I think this card is also good, kind of. This card would have been much better in Brothers War, obviously, because they have colorless mana. Like getting to 8 mana is a lot, but if you get to 8 mana, like you play this and you have like 2 3/3s on board. Well, those are now 5/3s. So your opponent like is kind of going to have a little bit of a tough time blocking the things. But yeah, it's still not fantastic. I don't think this is going to be as... Just 8 mana is just too much mana. Like it doesn't do quite enough for 8 mana, generally. And also it gets blown up by incidental artifact removal. And it has to attack every turn. I do think it's actually playable, though. I think it's a card that you can put in your deck in some decks, probably. Next, Ichorplate Golem. 3 colorless mana for 2/3. Whenever a creature enters your battlefield under your control, if it has 1 or more oil counters on it, put an oil counter on it. Creatures you control with oil counters on them get +1/+1. I think this is actually going to be pretty good. This is going to be solid. It's an oil lord. Almost like a ton of creatures in the set have oil counters. You kind of like are going to have to see deck by deck, like whether or not yours is one that wants this. But I think on average it's kind of meh. And if you have like a critical mass of cards that have oil counters on them, it's very good. Like it just becomes very, very good. Like if you're playing the 1-drops that have oil counters on them, this thing's insane. But it has to, like some of them like are the ones that have to enter with, like it has to enter with the oil counters. It can't just like generate them, so that's like kind of part of it. So that's also relevant to note about this card. Next is the green Skull Bomb. Its difference from the other Skull Bombs is that a target creature you control gets +3/+3 and gains trample until end of turn. So very similar to the white one, but also very solid. Draws you a card, makes your thing bigger, makes it like enables an attack. It's just really good. Just like gets your stuff through and draws cards, and it's cheap to get on the battlefield. Next, Mirren Safe House. 3 colorless mana for an artifact. As long as it's on the battlefield, it has all activated ability of all land cards and graveyards, which is not especially good. There's not a ton of lands that are that good. You can sacrifice this to draw a card. Is that something that you want? Is that something you want in this set? You want to be able to sacrifice your 3-mana artifact to draw? Is that good? I assume that this means that you can use it as like ability to fix in some scenarios, but this is not. If you have like non-basics, but this ain't good. Next, Monument to Perfection. I'm not even going to bother reading this card. It is not a limited card. You can't do the thing. Like it wants you to have a bunch of sphere lands. There are not enough of them. Like you have to have 9 different land names to activate it. You don't. That's not possible in limited. Like it just isn't really achievable. Next, Mirror Convert. Mirror Convert. I don't know how to say that word. 2 colorless mana for a 2/1 with Toxic 1, and you can tap and pay 2 life to add 1 mana of any color. This is very good. This is very strong because it allows you to fix your mana and also allows you to ramp for colorless mana, which is really good. So yeah, just lets you do all the stuff, you know. It does hurt you. I'm not going to deny that the 2 life does matter. The 2 life is very relevant, but like in this set, it's less relevant theoretically. And yeah, just the fixing is so strong, and the fact that there's Toxic 1 on it as well to like allow it to do stuff on attacks is just good. Next, Mirror Custodian. Mirror. I should learn how to actually say this properly. 3 colorless mana for a 2/3 when it enters the battlefield, you scry 2, then each opponent may scry 1. Not very good. Weird and not very good and doesn't do anything. So clearly just not worth the card. Next, Mirror Kinsmith. 4 colorless mana for a 3/1 when it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a mirror card, reveal it, put it in your hand, and then shuffle. This is not very good because all the mirrors in this set are not very good. So this doesn't like find you anything busted like it did, like the Dominaria United one did. So, you know, it's kind of difficult to see this being good. Next, Phyrexian Atlas, 3 colorless mana for a Manolith, and also whenever becomes tapped, each opponent who has 3 or more poison counters loses 1 life, which is maybe the least relevant line of text I've ever seen. Just, I guess, like, maybe if you're playing, like, hyper-control-y stuff, you can, like, be doing the, like, you can burn people out really slowly with this, but I don't. I'm really out. Yeah, there's 9 layers or whatever. I got it. I get you. I don't know. Sure. Next, Prophetic Prism. 2 colorless mana for an artifact. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. You can pay 1 tap to filter your mana. Yeah, this is going to be decent. I don't think it's going to be as good as the Energy Refractor was in Brothers War, but what this thing will let you do is splash the Skull Bombs, which is something I think you're going to want to be doing in this set. Especially in like a sealed or something like that. Maybe not as relevant in draft. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's not as many like artifact ETB triggers in this set either. So it's kind of hard for me to see this being like as effective. Usually this is just not especially incredible, but it's fine. Nothing wrong with it. Next is a very interesting one. Prosthetic injectors. 1 colorless for an equipment. Equipped creature gets +0/+2 and has toxic 1 and it is equipped for 1. So this card is very interesting. This is a card that I think you're going to see a lot of people look at the card and they're going to say, okay, like we might have something here. And I think there's sort of a collective feeling that we might have something here. Right? Like this actually might be a good colorless equipment. We don't see many of those very often. It doesn't happen very often, but this equipment is cheap enough and flexible enough that it might actually be good. And it does a lot of things that you want. It makes your small creatures into creatures that have toxic 1 and therefore have relevant text on them. Now, does it make them harder to block? Not really, because it only gives health toughness buff. So it just makes sure they stay alive. It's really better with like flyers. Like flyers are what want to wear this because then you can actually get the toxic damage in. Like it does give your stuff toxic, which maybe works with some of your combat tricks. Maybe gives you stuff with your other abilities. Maybe like allows you to have other synergy stuff. This is like I'm keeping my eye out for this. This could be good. I'm not starting especially high on it. I'm going to start it in tier 3 where I think it's like fine. I think it's not completely embarrassing unlike most equipment. However, I am definitely willing to move up on this if it becomes clear that it's insane. I'm also willing to move down if it becomes clear that it just is completely not low, like not enough impact, you know. Next, a Rib Skiff. 4 colorless mana for a 4/4 vehicle. Has toxic 2 and when it enters the battlefield, draw a card. And it has crew for 3. I'm starting high on this. So I know I'm starting high on this. But 4 mana thing that draws a card and has like relevant text on it when it enters the battlefield, I think is pretty good. I think this is solid. Like now, are you ever going to be able to crew it? Probably not. But like, I don't know, like, how bad can this be when it draws a card when it enters the battlefield? Right? Like, how bad would this card have to, like, it would have to do nothing, and I don't think it does nothing. Like, how bad is 4 mana draw a card? It's not, I think it's bad. I think it's really bad. But, like, if you have a 3-drop in play, your 3-drop may or may not have 3 power. If your 3-drop has 3 power, so you have a 3/2 in play or something. Like, this is fine. Like, you can block, you may or may not be able to attack. Like, I think this is fine. I'm, again, willing to move down on this if it turns out it is just completely terrible and unusable, but I'm starting high on this. Next, Soulless Jailer. 2 colorless mana for an 0/4 permanent. Cards and graveyards can't enter the battlefield. Permanent players can't cast non-creature spells from graveyards or exile. Not a limited card. Doesn't do things unlimited. Next, Staff of Completion. 3 colorless mana for an artifact. You can tap it to pay various amounts of life to do various things that are not worth the amount of life that you're paying, and you can pay 5 to untap it. This card upsets me because it's bad. Like, I don't understand why they made this card bad. I just don't, like, what? Like, why? Why did they make it bad? I don't understand. I don't understand why it had to be bad instead of good. Like, all of these abilities are not worth what you're paying life-wise for them. Like, you can pay 4 life to draw a card. Is that, like, you can draw, what, 3 cards? And then you're, like, dead. There's not a ton of life gain in this set. There really isn't. Pay 3 left to proliferate? Don't think so. And you're never paying 5 to untap it because you have to pay life for all the things. So it doesn't matter that you're untapping. Like, this is just... I hate this card. I hate this card so much. Like, I don't even know if it's playable and constructed. I genuinely, like, I don't think that it is. So I don't know. Is this like for commander? This is a commander card. Is that just what this is? I think that's just what this is. I think this is just commander only, and the rest of the world has to suffer and see the card be printed because of reasons. I don't know. It's frustrating to see cards like this, but it's nothing I can do about it. Next, the best of the Skull Bombs. This is the blue Skull Bomb, and the difference between it and the other Skull Bombs is you can pay 2 mana blue to sacrifice it and return target creature to its owner's hand. Oh baby, that is really strong. That is just so. This is like pack one. Like I kind of like when I first created this, I was like, should I put this in tier 1? And I was like, I can't put it in tier 1. I just can't bring myself to put it in tier 1. But it is truly insane, right? It is truly an insane thing to have happen to you. Like you bounced. First of all, 4 mana to bounce something and draw a card is good. That's a tier 2 card by itself. And so this is that, and it's good. So yeah, I mean this thing's just really strong. So you should like this. You should be splashing this pretty much like every time you see it, I think. Next, Sword of Forge and Frontier. 3 colorless mana for a sword. A creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from red and from green. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to a player, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. You may play an additional land this turn, and its equip cost is 2. They are continuing the sword cycle that is almost complete at this point, is my understanding. This is a pretty good sword. I don't think it's going to be like insane because it's going to suffer from many of the things that equipment has suffered from in the past. But yes, this is very strong. This is an extremely strong card. Whether or not it's actually tier 1, I don't know. I'm going to put it in tier 1 because I like the sword cycle. So, yep, that's kind of the reason. I don't know if this is actually tier 1 good. It's very strong though. It can take over the game. If you are playing against a red or a green opponent, like if you're playing against a red-green opponent, they just scoop to this pretty much. They just kind of lose. Is what it is. That happens sometimes. Yeah, so it's very strong. Actually, the strength of this card even depends on like the metagame too. Like if red-green ends up being the best or most played deck, which it won't be because it's red-green, but if it was, this card would get actually better because you would be whatever. So yeah, this card's really strong. Next, Tablet of Completion. 2 colorless mana. You can tap it. It's an artifact. You can tap to put an oil counter on it. You can tap to add colorless mana, and you can only activate this if it has 2 or more oil counters on it. And you can pay 1 and tap to draw a card. And you can only activate if you have 5 or more oil counters on it. This is a nice little engine. This is a nice card. This actually is a great, like, I think this might go in like the Arena Cube and stuff like that. This is a cool little cube card. I like this card a lot for a lot of different things. Just a nice little engine. It's just like every turn you just put an oil counter on it, put an oil counter on it, you keep putting oil counters on it. Oh, and now I want to ramp. Oh, well, didn't need to ramp this turn. Let me just keep putting counters on it. Now I get to 5 counters. I've proliferated a couple of times, and look here I am. There are 5 counters. Yeah, so that's just really good. Yeah, there's just oil counter stuff throughout the whole set, and this thing plays really well with all that stuff. It's kind of like a Maze Mind Tome. That's like it's a little more delayed than that. But you can tap on turn 1 to put the oil counter on it. So if you play this on 2, tap, put an oil counter on it. Tap on turn 3, put an oil counter on it. Turn 4, you have ramp. Like, I don't know. I just want to believe in this card. Like, the proliferate stuff should help it be really strong, I think. It's just another like thing that you can have on the battlefield to get value out of your proliferate cards. And this is the final colorless card. We'll move on to lands after this. Zenith Chronicler. 2 colorless mana for 3 mana. When a player casts their first multicolor spell, each turn, each other player draws a card. So I think this is likely to do nothing most of the time and just be a 2 mana 3/1 that's colorless. So yeah, I don't know. It's not very good. So, yep, that's about it. Just kind of like hangs out. Just kind of sits there. It's a 2 mana 3/1. So on to the lands. There's a cycle of these lands, 1 for each color. They are spheres, and they come into play tapped. They add the mana of the color they are representing, and you can pay 1 and tap them, or 2 and tap them, and you can draw a card to sacrifice them. They're fine. I think they are probably worse than some of the other lands, but I think that they're serviceable, and you should pick them if you will know that you are the color that they are in. There's also 5 of these, the fast lands. Yep, 5 fast lands. They're fine, you sort of know when you want them, you generally don't want to pick them very highly in limited. So next is Myrix. Myrix is a sphere. You can tap it to add colorless, or you can tap to add 1 mana of any color, but you can only activate it if it entered the battlefield this turn. You can also pay 3 and tap to create a 1/1 colorless might token. Toxic 1 and other stuff. Can't block and all that. Yeah, this is really strong because like if the land just turns into a thing that makes a bunch of tokens in the late game, that's really good. Like, that's just strong, and it also does fix you the turn that you play it. So, yep, I think it's great. Next to the Monumental Facade. There's a sphere enters the battlefield with 2 oil counters on it. You can tap to add colorless, or you can tap to remove an oil counter from it and put an oil counter on target artifact or creature you control. You can activate that only as a sorcery. I don't know why it was too good for that to be an instant, but you know. I don't know, I actually kind of like this the more I've seen it look through the set. When I originally rated it, I put it in tier 3. I actually might put this in tier 2. I think I would leave it in tier 3 for now because it is like tough. But yeah, if you have oil stuff, I think this is going to be decent. I wouldn't like first pick this or anything, but that's sort of why tier 3 is sort of where it belongs. But next, the Mycosynth Gardens. Another sphere. You can tap to add a colorless, or filter your mana 1 tap and add 1 mana of any color. Or you can pay X and you can tap it and it becomes a copy of target non-token artifact you control with mana value X. Which you do not have to do as a sorcery, so you can copy your artifact creature on like your opponent's turn, and then you have 2 of them, and you're doing the thing. And this thing's very, very strong. This is really, really a strong land, in my opinion. There's going to be enough artifact stuff that you can just you just turn your thing into one of your other things, so that's great. Next, the Seed Core. Another sphere. Taps to add a colorless. You can tap to add 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana only to cast Phyrexian spells. So there are 91 Phyrexian spells in this set, which is a lot, but it's about a third of the set. So that's decent. And target creature gets +1/+1, or only a target 1/1 creature gets +2/+1 until end of turn, and only if your opponent has 3 or more poison counters. The fact that it has to be a 1/1 makes that ability so much worse. Which makes me put this a lot lower. If you have a lot of Phyrexian spells in your deck, you'll take this, I think. That's kind of it. And this is the final card in the entire set. Terramorphic Expanse. It, of course, is the Evolving Wilds variant. You sacrifice it, tap sacrifice for a basic land card, and put it on the battlefield tapped. And that's great, and I put it at tier 2 because you should take it over anything that's filler. So that's where it belongs, in my opinion. And that's it for me. So hopefully you enjoyed the always riveting colorless section of this review. See you next time.